say that as this is only 45 minutes to an hour, I'm not going to do breakout groups because it eats into them too much. But I will be asking you for some ideas. And I'll explain that when I get to that slide, which I want you to drop into chat for me and share with each other. And then at the end, I'm going to try and leave at least 10 minutes at the end so that we can just all unmute and have an open discussion and ask questions and share. So a little bit of networking at the end. So without further ado, I shall make a start. As I said earlier, my name is Philippa Ollerhead. My contact details are there on that slide. Feel free to contact me at any point should you have any thoughts or questions following this training. Sometimes you can't always think of the questions during the training, and it's only afterwards when you absorb the information you start to think, oh, I wished I'd asked that. Feel free to contact me. I'm more than happy to hear from you and answer any questions that you have. So what am I aiming to do this morning? Well, I'm aiming to ensure that you feel at the end of this update session that you are up to date with the latest safeguarding statutory guidance from the DfE, and you're also up to date with the consultation document, which is due for publication for September 2021. Now, what's quite interesting about this is that obviously we are in a state of flux at the moment, with schools about to reopen on March the 8th, and really a degree of, quite a high degree of uncertainty at the moment from Ofsted about how they will undertake their inspection framework from September 2021. And I think I'm feeling more confident as each day goes by that their full inspection regime will not continue fully until September 2021, because they feel that it's important that they leave schools alone to settle in and get through this hybrid period. So what the decisions Ofsted make for September 2021 about the style of inspection and what they will look at will have an impact on safeguarding. So what we know will be published in September 2021 may be built on, and there may be more information in response to the decisions that Ofsted make. And clearly anything that I say today, and there's never been more of a time in education where I'm delivering training with lots of question marks in it, because there are some things I just don't know. Because they haven't been decided. So anything that it follows on from this training session that was going to be different for September 21 will be published on the NAHT website. So that is your go-to place. It's the place that I go to for impartial advice that is clear and concise. And that's what I highly recommend that you do as time moves on between now and September 21. So I also want you to develop a deeper understanding of leading school safeguarding strategically as a DSL team. And it's important to say that this update is about leading school safeguarding. This is for leaders, it's for DSL teams, it's for head teachers, it's for safeguarding governors, it's for school leaders in every sector, secondary, primary, special sector, alternative provision. And it is about leading school safeguarding strategically. It's about how you manage safeguarding from the top and the information that you pass down to your teaching staff and your governors, as is the full course that follows in March and April. That is advanced DSL training. And also I aim to be able to give you time to reflect and ensure that you have your internal school response procedures are robust and that you've integrated everything that is new within safeguarding. So without further ado, let's have a look at the latest updates from September 20 and the consultation for September 21. Clearly, there's an awful lot of information on both of those documents, and I have taken out the things that I feel are the most relevant, the things that absolutely have to be looked at and thought about again, rather than things that are just reiterating what we've always known. So key updates from September 20. The 2020 version of the statutory Keeping Children Safe in Education, that came into September this September, and we know at this point that there was obviously additional guidance for all staff on mental health. Never has that been more important. And that profile of mental health is feeding through to September 2021 and is writ large. That is, I'd say, if you said to me, what's my headline for safeguarding between now and September 2021 to establish within my school, I would say it's that greater focus on mental health. There's also mention of child criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation. All three of those phrases should now be in your safeguarding policy with some explanation of how you are acknowledging those things and managing them within school. Even if within your own sector you feel that those, certainly the last two, are not relevant to you, you should still mention them and say that you have an understanding and a training of how to be aware of them. And that shows any external visitors coming to your school that you have updated the policies and that you are aware of the updates. There's also new guidance for head teachers, DSLs and governors on supporting children with social workers. This, I feel, is in response to the fact that social care is shrinking. It's been shrinking for almost a decade now. We know that social care is shrinking. We know it's harder to get responses from social workers. It's harder to get referrals through to CAMS. And the DfE's response to that, rightly or wrongly, I won't give you my opinion here, is to put more pressure back on the schools. So the pressure on the schools here is that you always follow up with social workers. You don't just refer out and let the social care team deal with the situation. You stay involved, you keep in touch with social workers. In other words, you audit the process and you ensure that there's an outcome. And that is now being pushed back to the school. You should also follow your allegations against staff procedures where someone may have been involved in an incident outside of school which didn't involve children. Now, the best example I can give you here is domestic violence. So if you are aware of a situation with a member of your staff where there has been a domestic violence incident, it's now advised that you follow your allegations against staff for that person. Even if that person was not the instigator but was the receiver of the domestic violence, you follow that procedure, you ask them to go offsite, look into that, to make sure that you are absolutely confident that what they have been through will not impact on their ability to work with children. And you should have the paperwork to back that up to say that you've carried out that investigation. You should also use the same procedure, allegations against staff, where allegations are made against supply staff, even if they are employed by an agency. So I think that we've always known that, but that's just absolutely now clearly in writing as clarity. As well as that, we have further information on the DSL and other safeguarding roles. This is purely to tell you that this has been updated, as I'm sure you will be aware, so that the DSL's team need to be available, but that can be virtually available. I expect that that will be continued into September 2021, just because, as we'll talk about in a few slides, it's about it's about building on the strength that we have built during the pandemic period. And one of the things that's become apparent is our flexibility around virtual availability. So I expect that that will continue in September 2021 with safeguarding, and the DSL and other safeguarding roles must be available, including virtually. We know that staff training needs to be updated to include staff training on mental health. Now, that's not just mental health for your pupils, it's also mental health for your staff. It's that umbrella phrase that is about you engaging with external agencies and engaging with staff internally to provide outstanding mental health. I would say that's your focus. There's been a slight update on the child protection policy. All I need to say to you on this is that if requested, you must publish a paper copy if you don't publish your policy on your website. However, it's clear for me to say that it is best practice to publish your child protection policy on your website. I would say it's also best practice, something that I see in outstanding schools all the time, is a separate section in the parent area, titled up as safeguarding, which includes the policy, the contact details of staff within the school to contact if there is a safeguarding concern, and external contact for your MASH team, your social care team, for people to contact outside of school hours. That's really good practice, all in one umbrella portal so that parents can easily find that information. And clearly all safeguarding policies and procedures should identify how you are dealing with mental health concerns. Another point to highlight is protecting vulnerable children. It's even more apparent now in both the 2020 version and the update for 2021 that sharing information is absolutely crucial with social workers, but with all external agencies. Now, all I would say on this is in response to some reticence from some schools linked to GDPR. So when GDPR was first launched, there was some reticence, and I completely understand why, because it was launched with a big bang and everybody thought, what can I share? What can't I share? And there was some concern that safeguarding wasn't being shared effectively from that point. So the simplest thing for me to say here is that safeguarding always trumps GDPR. If you are in any doubt at all about a safeguarding incident and whether you should share it, the answer is yes. It is better to share all information with all parties of relevance. You don't overshare, obviously, with people that have no relevance, but you must share safeguarding information for the safety of vulnerable children. So you should ensure you have mental health early help for pupils and for staff. Now, I'm going to use this phrase a few times, early help, and this is one of the things I want you to think about. I'm going to stop in a few slides and ask you to drop something into chat. And one of the things I want you to think about is early help. I'm very aware from the work that I do with all the schools that I work with as an advisor, that this is a phrase that is used widely by Ofsted inspectors. And this is a phrase that's used widely in keeping children safe in education. But when I do safeguarding audits and I say to a school, what are your early help strategies? I often find that I get rather a piecemeal answer, because nobody's actually sat down and brainstormed, what do we do, everything that we do internally, and who do we work with externally to help all of our children, not just our vulnerable children, all of our children with any issues that they might have that stop them accelerating into something worse. So that's really what early help is. It's about stopping things accelerating into a worse situation. So a really great thing to do, and a point to take away from this training, is to sit down with the DSL team and brainstorm everything that you do. Create a list of your early help strategies, put it up in the staff room. You're then aware of everything that you do. Your staff are aware, and they will be able to speak with the same clarity that you can and the same consistency that you can if they are asked by an inspector, what are your early help strategies in school? So just a tip that I know works well, because the last thing you want is people saying, oh, and I forgot to tell you this, and half a day later, oh, and I forgot to mention this. That is piecemeal, and it's difficult to then represent that in any kind of Ofsted report. So have a think about that, and we'll share some ideas later on in chat. And then virtual learning, safeguarding protocols should be refreshed and maintained to accommodate this gradual unlocking. So I'm saying gradual unlocking. I know all children are back from March the 8th, but we don't know that between March the 8th and the end of the summer term, whether we are going to be in a position where you may have to ask some classes again to leave site and socially distance for a period of time. There's still going to be some kind of hybrid system in place for the next couple of months. So virtual safeguarding protocols should be maintained and refreshed. And then September 2021, well, we know the DfE is currently consulting on proposed changes to keeping children safe in education. And as I said, I think these will, views have to be submitted by March the 4th, a couple of days away now, but I think that there will be additional changes. The window might open again. There could be further consultation when Ofsted announce how they're going to carry out inspections from September 2021. So under these proposals, you'd be able to decide whether staff who don't work directly with children on a regular basis read either part 1 of Keeping Children Safe in Education, as they're expected to do now, or a new condensed version of part 1, which doesn't currently exist but will be published in the new version for 2021. So that's a decision for you and your governing body to make, whether you have people who just come into school on an irregular basis, don't necessarily work closely with children. You can give them the condensed version for your own safety to ensure that they have read part 1 or the condensed version of part 1. It's also going to be useful for schools who are still on a paper-based sign-in system, and also those that are on an electronic sign-in system. The statement that you ask visitors to read about safeguarding, you'll be able to use this condensed version of part 1 for that statement and be able to tweak it to your own context. So it'll be useful for that sign-in procedure as well. So in part 1 of the update for September 2021, we know that the list of factors which may indicate a child may benefit from early help, there's that phrase again, one to think about, is to include children with mental health needs and a family member in prison or affected by parental offending. So these are additional factors to consider on your vulnerable list of pupils. So that's children with mental health. I would suggest children with mental health within their own family unit. family member in prison or affected by parental offending. A risk of children who are at risk of honour-based abuse, such as female genital mutilation or forced marriage and persistent absence from education. So these are all factors that you will always been aware of, but they are now brought into the list for vulnerable children. Abuse in intimate personal relationships between peers is now a type of peer-on-peer abuse, as well as upskirting, which you'll know was added in previously. And be aware that technology is a significant component in many safeguarding wellbeing issues, and that online abuse often occurs alongside face-to-face abuse. Now, I know I don't need to highlight this to schools. I know as a safeguarding, as an external investigator for safeguarding issues with schools, that online abuse, Facebook, all social media are often the backbone of serious safeguarding incidents. So be aware, make sure it's in your staff code of conduct, the way you want staff to use social media, and make sure that you offer, I would suggest, parent training workshops on how to stay safe online and how to protect children from online abuse. Think about refreshing your behaviour policy. I say this for several reasons. Your behaviour policy should include measures to prevent bullying, including cyberbullying. So you'll appreciate from what I'm saying here that cyber abuse is being weaved into everything to do with the new Keeping Children Safe in Education. But I do say refresh your behaviour policy as well, because as you know, that is a criteria now within the Ofsted framework. And what Ofsted will be judging you on, and this is part of safeguarding, is that your behaviour policy is understood by everybody, is consistently applied, and has an effect. So it has a positive effect on behaviour. So it's really sensible, I would say annually, to look at your behaviour policy, analyse its impact, tweak it, refresh it, and relaunch it to staff and pupils. And then that is part of ensuring that your early help is robust and in place. Safeguarding and child protection training for all staff at induction should include online safety, and I also suggest for best practice that you think about how you can introduce that to parents. What a lot of schools have said to me recently, and it's something interesting to take on board, is that because they've had to do their information for parents and any training for parents virtually in the last 12 months, they found they've had a far greater impact on virtual training with parents than they have with physical. And that is something that they are going to continue with. So I found that an interesting point to take on board. Update the list of factors which may indicate a child may benefit from early help to include children with health conditions. So your early help strategies, there's that phrase again, should include vulnerable children, children with health conditions, and anybody who's on your monitoring list, and that will include anybody who's got health conditions. Staff should know the indicators of abuse and neglect for specific safeguarding issues such as child criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation. Now, as senior leaders, you don't need to worry too much about this, because your advanced DSL training will include additional information on child, criminal and sexual exploitation, and from that training you will be able to take what is relevant to your school and put it into the training that you deliver to your staff and governors, which is now seen as best practice. Staff should be vigilant, as multiple safeguarding issues will overlap with one another. All of these risk factors now clearly overlap with one another, and it's about being clear and vigilant about that. Include sexual abuse and county lines in the list of extra familial harms. So these are other phrases that should be included in your policy. And update the definition of sexting to refer specifically to sharing nude and semi-nude images and or videos. That bullet point phrase should be dropped into your new policy for September 2021 to show that you are aware of the new information. Around part 2, this is the management of safeguarding. Governing boards and proprietors should make sure that there are policies on send and supporting pupils with medical conditions, and these reflect safeguarding. This is obviously extremely relevant in the special sector where medical conditions are more complex, but it's relevant for every sector now that medical conditions are included and that there is a clear policy that is approved by governors around the management of medical conditions. Serious violence is reflected in your child protection policy where appropriate. There are updates on online safety. There's a new reference to parental engagement. Bear in mind what I said about that virtual parental engagement, which a lot of people want to continue with. Specify that you have robust security to protect users and their data. You should review your approach annually, including a risk assessment. And that should reflect the risks your pupils face. So there's almost like, in my analysis of this, is there's less emphasis on prevent. You don't tend to, there's been nothing new on prevent for years. There's far less emphasis on prevent, but there's far more emphasis on robust security around the use of IT, cyber security, cyber bullying, and engaging parents with online safety. And that is all then embraces everything to do with prevent. There's a new paragraph to note that some groups of children are potentially at greater risk of harm, such as pupils in alternative children from education. So I can just focus on pupils in alternative provision for a moment. I think it's really quite important that I stress this. As this is an area that I think is going to be stressed as well in the new in the way Ofsted behave from September 2021. If you have pupils that are engaging in provision outside of your organisation, you need to know that they're there. You need to know that they're attending. You need to know that the progress that they're making, there's nothing new there. But you also need to be assured of the safeguarding provision that's provided by that alternative provider. So a site visitor risk assessment is going to be essential there. There's new guidance on the use of school and college premises for non-school college activities. In other words, anything that you offer your facilities up to the general public. Make sure there are appropriate arrangements in place to keep children safe during that time. Make sure external organisations have appropriate safeguarding protection in place, and include safeguarding requirements in the conditions for use that people may sign. Excuse me. You should consider how online safety is reflected in all your policies. That goes without saying. Additional links should be added around alternative provision, as I've already said. Schools and colleges have the power to hold and use information to promote children's welfare and should share that openly where appropriate. And that your regular safeguarding training for staff, that's not just your annual safeguarding training for staff, that's the regular safeguarding training that you will do through your staff briefings, staff meetings. It's integrated and it's aligned and it's considered as part of the whole school college safeguarding approach. It's bespoke to your school. That's a very important point that Ofsted raised with schools. Is it bespoke to your school? Do you deliver the training as a DSL team? And is it bespoke to your particular context? And it should have regard for the teachers' standards around a safe environment. So just a slight update to the recruitment process from September 2021 onwards. The proposed updates for keeping children safe in education include much more detail about carrying out steps of the recruitment process than the current version does. So these include new expectations to reflect best practice for advertising, shortlisting, interviewing, and ensuring ongoing vigilance. So there is going to be wording that must be included in adverts and application forms. So there will probably need to be an update in your marketing information for adverts and your application forms, and then information on how to shortlist and interview candidates. I haven't put the full detail in here, just to raise this with you when it's published for September 2021. The full course that's coming up at the end of March and April does have all the information in and what needs to be included. But again, if you're not able to attend the full course, then it will be published in the Keeping Children Safe in Education 2021. So I just want to stop for a moment and I want to use this phrase, coming back stronger. I think this is a great phrase. It's something I'm very aware of with the schools that I use. They know that they have, all the schools that I work with know that they have done things with safeguarding that are different during the pandemic. They've reached out to different children who have become vulnerable for different reasons. They've tweaked their safeguarding procedures. They've used different techniques. They've engaged with more virtual techniques. And this phrase, coming back stronger, is about what we should think about saving. What should we think about saving and really, keeping with us as we come back stronger following the pandemic? So I'd like you, as I continue to speak, I'm not going to stop, but I am going to stop at the end. I'd like you to drop into chat the things that you think that you have developed in safeguarding that mean that your safeguarding is going to come back stronger from March the 8th onwards. What are you going to keep? What are you going to save and move forward with? And I'm going to be doing this with all of the training courses that I do. using this phrase coming back stronger, and I'm going to try and gather information, because I know that schools are saying to me, we haven't got time. We're going to hit the ground running on March the 8th and we're going to lose things that have been great. So I'm trying to gather from all the schools that I work with, what are you going to retain? And I'm going to put that into a document, and I'm going to ask to share that with as many people as possible via the NEHT and via my own networks. So put into chat what you think you are going to save from safeguarding that has improved your practice over the last 12 months, and we'll share that together at the end. So I've put on here some websites that I think are going to be useful to you. Some you may know, some you may not. This is about coming back stronger. This is about engaging external providers to work with you in this time of extra input on mental health issues. So we've got Childline, Place to Be. I'm a great fan of Place to Be. I know schools that I work with them, and they are incredibly good around trauma. NSPCC and the Trauma Informed Schools Network UK. So please, contact those if you feel that you need to enhance your early help, which is exactly what these type of external contacts are. So let's focus a little bit more on leading safeguarding in schools. So this is about the strategic leadership of safeguarding in schools. And this is what this update is really about. It's about you as leaders embracing everything that is new in safeguarding and everything that you know you do well and what you might need to enhance. And this is about the strategic leadership. So one point I want to make strongly is that the backbone of strategic leadership is that the DSL team are the focus of safeguarding in a school. They do their training every 2 years, and they train the staff and the governors to the context of that school. In other words, you talk about the type of safeguarding issues that your school has and how you make put specific things in place to protect children from those safeguarding issues. So for example, in a small rural primary school, the predominant safeguarding issue might be around neglect. In a large secondary school, it might be in a city area, it might be around gangs. And in a special school, it might be around medical conditions and safety around physical management of children. So whatever your greater safeguarding concerns are, should be the backbone of the training you deliver to staff and governors. And Ofsted see that as really good practice. They love to see it. So the role descriptor for DSLs will now include responsibilities relating to working with mental health leads where safeguarding concerns are linked to mental health. In other words, you need to promote somebody internally to be a mental health lead in your school. Promoting, supporting engagement with parents and carers, that's part of the DSL role. Promoting educational outcomes for children, so that you are ensuring that the school or college knows who its cohort of children are who currently need a social worker, and understanding their academic progress and attainment, and maintaining a culture of high aspirations. Supporting teaching staff to feel confident to provide additional academic support or reasonable adjustments to help children who have needed a social worker to reach their potential. So that's about your high-end children. That's about the children who need social workers. I would say that as far as best practice is concerned, you should include also children who are being managed with early help and who are vulnerable, and ensuring that your staff know how best to support those and how best to provide additional academic support for those children as well. That, I would say, is outstanding safeguarding. There's clarity that child protection files should be transferred to a new school or college within 5 days, and that if there is an in-year transfer, that transfer of information must happen within 5 days of the start of a new term. DSL should be supported in developing knowledge and skills to understand the difficulties that children may have in approaching staff. This is about understanding questioning behaviours and how to train staff about drawing out information from children should always be in your safeguarding training for all staff. Those with disabilities and relevant health needs to also be listed under children in need, as we've said earlier, and the addition of DSLs understanding the importance of information sharing with schools or colleges on transfer, in-year transfers between primary and secondary. I would say between secondary and sixth form, and that is one of those areas where things can drop through the cracks between secondary and sixth form. That's an important transfer period if your children are going to sixth form colleges. Just about training is so important. DSLs undertake their training every 2 years, and that you have periodic update training, which this would be classed as, through network meetings, online training, wider reading. Training should be in line with your local Safeguarding Children's Board, but specific to your context. That is the key point here. And as I said, training is best provided by the DSL team. Early help. So I've mentioned this to you before. What are your early help strategies? Brainstorm it, write it up, put it in the staff room, discuss it. The more people that understand and consistently can talk about what the school does to manage early help, the more readily that help will be provided for pupils, because your staff will understand what's available. They will talk to you as a DSL team about how they want to help a vulnerable learner in your school. So again, have a think about your early help strategies. Drop into chat for me what you do for early help that you think it would be useful to share with other people on this training. It's always great to share ideas. You can unmute later and talk about it, but I will read through the chat later and share it with everybody. Make sure that your school response procedures are up to date. Make sure that they are robust and that they are refreshed every year in line with your behaviour policy, that there's a clear line of accountability, it's well communicated. If I was a visitor coming into your school and I was to talk to you, then your staff, then your pupils, then your governors, would they all say the same thing to me? That's what you need to be aware of as a leader. Is there consistency and understanding and approach? Make sure that this is really going to be writ large in safeguarding from September 2021 onwards, because there is a real concern about the level of mental health within households, around bereavement, around unemployment, about financial issues. So be aware that you're referring to children's social care. There is an emphasis on you to ensure that that referral takes place, that referral is followed up, and you know the outcome. You take on board that wider family setting and you communicate that to social care, and that you do follow up with social care at all times. You must understand that managing allegations against staff also include the fact that you must have procedures in place to make a referral to DBS if a person is dismissed or removed due to safeguarding concerns. Now, I don't want you to worry too much about this, because your local LADO will tell you exactly what to do if this were to happen to you. But it is a legal duty in failure not to refer, which is why I always mention it in the update training. Be aware that you must always ask the LADO for help if somebody has been dismissed or referred due to safeguarding concerns, to make sure that you comply with your legal duty to refer to DBS. A little bit more on managing allegations made against staff. It's important to manage allegations against staff appropriately and support those employees. They must understand that this is not a disciplinary, that you have to carry out a duty, an investigation as a duty of care to your employer or pupils. Most schools that, and I'm not this publicly, I would always advise, particularly in the secondary sector, and I'd also say with some of the special schools that I work with, I would always do a small internal investigation to check on your facts before you ask a member of staff to leave site and before you contact the LADO, because sometimes just that short investigation will raise the fact that this issue is a non-issue and shouldn't be pursued. However, if that short investigation results in any questions, then obviously you need to contact the LADO, you need to ask the member of staff to go home, and from that point you do an internal investigation, you communicate effectively with that member of staff, you appoint somebody to communicate with that member of staff who's not part of the investigating team, and you make sure that they are supported. And you do it as quickly as possible, because it's very stressful for that member of staff. So let's talk a little bit about the inspection of safeguarding, because that's also an important part of any kind of update training will give in between full DSL training. And this has never been an area of time where I feel there are so many question marks in what I might be saying to you, because I don't fully know how Ofsted is going to perform from September 2021. Now, I say that with some confidence because I work closely with active Ofsted inspectors who are part of the current Ofsted inspecting team, and they don't know yet. So because they don't know, they can't pass that information to me. You will be aware that Ofsted cannot use IDSR information because there isn't any. So they will have to be inspecting more around school improvement and less around hard data. However, I almost feel like that puts a greater emphasis on the things that there are hard data about. That is behaviour concerns, bullying incidents, missing from education, persistent absence, single central record, making sure that everything to do with safeguarding is absolutely robust. So by default, because there is less hard data on teaching and learning, I feel there's going to be a greater emphasis on that investigation in safeguarding. So I feel it's really important that this is focused on in schools. So what do the potential areas of concern look like for anybody inspecting your school, whether that's an education advisor coming in to do a safeguarding audit, or whether that's Ofsted inspectors, or whether that's you as senior leaders doing your own internal audit of safeguarding? You are looking out for failing to act on the early signs of abuse and neglect. You're looking for lack of speed, lack of consistency, and lack of detail. You're looking for poor record keeping. It's always more of a concern for me as a safeguarding auditor that if record keeping is on paper, I always have to do a deeper dive, because if you're using CPOMs or My Concern or any other software that is specific to safeguarding, I know that there are built-in safeguarding, there are built-in methods that mean that everything has to be recorded. With the paper version, you have to really scrutinise those paper incident forms to make sure that there is the name of the person, that the incident details, the time that happened, the follow-up, the outcome. You have to make sure that all those areas are there. You're looking for staff's failure to listen to the views of children. Too busy, ignoring children. Some of the most serious safeguarding incidents that have happened historically from a school's perspective have been about ignoring safeguarding issues. Some of those, the majority of those, have been about health issues. So remember that this is about medical issues as well as safeguarding around abuse and neglect, etc. Failing to reassess concerns where the situation does not improve. Sharing information too slowly, that's a real concern that I have, and failing to challenge those who are not taking action. That's your social care team. So that's part of what Ofsted are now going to be looking at, what you should look for as a senior leadership team, and what external advisors will look for. Concerns which may arise during an inspection, as I said, are delays or negligence in passing on concerns, suspension of a member of staff or a current safeguarding concern. So any external person reviewing your school for any context will always ask if there are any current safeguarding concerns. One thing that I'm very aware of as an external advisor is that you will often find, particularly in schools that are struggling, you will often find staff or pupils who will tell you that there has been a current safeguarding concern because they feel it's not being handled appropriately. If that happens, it's your legal obligation to follow that through, investigate it as part of the process, and then pass it on if there's a concern. So this is about making sure that you as a DSL team are completely on top of current safeguarding concerns, you know what's active, and you know where you're up to with it. Failure to follow statutory guidance or locally agreed procedures, particularly around safer recruitment or for dealing with allegations against staff. Failure to comply with legal duty to refer a member of staff who has harmed or poses a risk to the child onto DBS. So these are some of the things, and these 4 bullet points are the absolute top end. These are the things that could result in an immediate Section 5 inspection, an immediate lowering of a grade to RI or below. So these are the top end things. Okay. So that is as dead on time at 10:15. That is the end of the update training. I know that's been a very short, sharp, swift run through all the new things that I'm aware of that I think you need to take on board between now and September 2021 in order to update your policies and update your procedures. So just to clarify that, I am delivering full DSL advanced training on March the 10th and April the 13th, and you can book now for that. And that training is a detailed analysis of the September 2021 update, greater detail on strategic leadership, so a step-by-step run through of how to manage safeguarding as a strategic leader of a school. Content for annual staff training and governor training. It's not full content, but it's everything that is new that might need to be included in your training for all of your staff and all of your governors. Updates on the safer recruitment issues that are apparent for September 2021, particularly around this application form information and advertisement information. Information on site security that I always like to run through, and how to carry out your own safeguarding audit. And what I tend to run through with the full training is a blow by blow, what happens within the Ofsted inspection process in the first 2 hours of the 2 days, if you're a good school, around safeguarding. So I just literally talk you through, and that helps you do your own safeguarding audit. I also provide paperwork to record that. So that's all in the courses on the 12th and the 13th, start again, Philippa, the 10th of March and the 13th of April. So I'm just going to move on to the final slide, which is the main contacts, which I'll just leave there for a moment. But of course, you will be having, I believe you'll be having a copy. This is recorded, so you'll be able to access this information and look back on it to refresh your memory. I'm not quite sure whether you'll have the slides. I'll have to check with with Lorraine when we get through to the final stage. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the share and just, I'm going to come back to you. Hello again. And I'm just going to open chat, and I'm going to share the things that are in chat for a moment. And then I'm going to ask you to unmute, sorry, and just ask me any questions in these last 10 minutes that we've got. Ask me any questions, share anything with me that you want to share with the rest of the group. Any clarity that you need, please feel free. So while I just give you a moment to think about what you might ask, I'm just going to run through this chat, which I'm hoping that you've dropped in some really useful things to share with others. Okay, so Rachel said that she's got weekly safeguarding fact sheets for staff on our business info, weekly communication. Great idea. This is all about virtual communication, which is what I said earlier. Coming back stronger is about embracing all these virtual information things that we've established that we don't want to lose now. I think that some of them are great. More regular short whole school updates remotely, agree completely. Regular phone calls to check in on certain families, ensuring children's mental health is healthy, great. Virtual training with parents and carers, yeah, I agree. This is the thing, that this virtual training is the thing that's been said to me most of all, that they've got incredible engagement with parents, and I think there's going to be all sorts of virtual parent workshops, even virtual parents' evenings. Some schools are saying I'm carrying on with it. I've got a far better uptake. Going to keep the wellbeing email link for parents to contact schools with concerns, great. Weekly remote briefing, emails for parents linked to support and wellbeing, more contact. This is all about this remote. Moving to one-to-one sessions with children, wellbeing and academics, check-ins, great. Personal training to ensure children are safe online, at home and at school, good. Continue regular email contact with parents again, remote meetings with DSLs in the borough, great idea. Yeah. Use of one-to-one sessions with form tutors, TAs, key workers, and access to breakfast club, after school club, and respite nights in our residential provision. That's a good idea. We've got links here, NAHT links that have been dropped into Eventbrite around safeguarding. Thank you for that. And a question here from Nick. I'm reading this for the first time, Nick, so excuse me if I have to think about the answer. There seems to be some confusion in my LA over the difference between safeguarding policy and a child protection policy. Yes, there's a lot of confusion in LAs about that. Some say they are one and the same, some say they need to be separate documents. Any thoughts? Yes, it doesn't matter, is the answer to that, Nick. I generally tend to prefer them to be one and the same. They're the same thing, safeguarding and child protection. It's exactly the same thing. You will talk about child protection in your safeguarding policy. You will talk about safeguarding in your child protection policy. A lot of schools just amalgamate it into one, safeguarding and child protection policy. I'd say that's best practice. When I see that as a title, I tend to think that that's a really good way of just pulling that together into one place. Okay, this recording is going to go on YouTube apparently. Oh gosh, going to be famous. As school workers are increasingly disappearing, parents are expecting more and more from TAs and key workers. I agree again about that. And I think that involves perhaps involving more TAs and key workers into your DSL training, wider training, making sure they're completely up to date. And information on how a school's going to manage this expectation. And I agree, we really need to we really need to think about that and how we're going to involve more people. I am really big fan of the head teacher not being the DSL, that being pushed down, because I think head teachers have got far too much on their plate at the moment in this recovery curriculum. And I'm a big fan of more people being included on a DSL team, not necessarily members of senior leadership team, but a wider remit. So can I ask you now to, for these last 10 minutes, to unmute and feel free to ask me any questions. I'm going to use this chat to create this document about sharing good practice that I'm hoping to share via the NAHT to a wider audience. So thank you for your comments. I really appreciate you doing that for me. Okay, I'm going to close that so I can see everybody. So if anybody wants to unmute and share anything with me or ask me any questions, please feel free to do so now. And while we're doing that, I'm going to ask Lorraine to launch a poll, which will appear on your screen for you to be able to record how you've felt the session has gone for you and whether it's been useful for you. So I've got Pauline on the screen. Is there anything you want to ask me, Pauline?
Hi, I just wanted to know, you know, the disqualification of Childcare Act, you know, that the form that relevant staff complete. Is there a time frame how often that should be completed? Should it be annually or should it be, I'm just wondering, because I'm sort of a recent governor of a school, and when I've looked, sometimes that's not been done, shall we say, for about the last 10 years. And I'm sort of just wondering, yeah. So I'm just sort of wondering what's the, I mean, and I know there's in some ones we know it's every 2 years, whatever. I'm just wondering what would the good practice be?
I'd say the good practice is every other year, Pauline. That's what I'm aware of that most schools do as good practice. Some schools might leave it longer. There's no statutory requirement. You know, you're not going to be completely hauled over the coals for that. But on the safe side, I'd say every 2 years.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nice to speak to you.
Thank you.
I've got Alistair raised his or her hand.
Yes, thank you, Philippa, for participating today. Just a quick question. Could you remind me when a child is transferring from one school to another?
Yeah.
Is it best practice that both schools take responsibility for that, or is there like a hierarchy in that one?
Okay, well, it's a good question, that, Alistair. I've always said from my own experience that there is a hierarchy, and it's the school that's got the child currently on roll that has the lead role here. So if the child is moving from your school to another school, while they're still on your school roll, it's your responsibility to make sure that that goes smoothly, that the information is passed over. When the information is passed over and the child has started at the other school, then the child goes onto their roll. You get confirmation that the child has moved and that they are on the other school roll. Yeah. And then it's their responsibility as the lead school.
Okay, and at that point we can remove that record, or
we do then. All Alistair is, in the new framework, there is a phrase called off-rolling. Now, off-rolling is an obvious thing that people do wrong on purpose. It's taking a child off-roll. They don't appear in their statistics. I've worked with a couple of schools that have done this inadvertently by removing a child from roll before they had confirmation that the child was on somebody else's roll. So make sure you've got that in writing. An email to say, yes, this child is now on our roll, then you can confidently remove them from your roll.
Thanks so much.
No problem. Any other questions? Lovely. I think we're probably coming to the end then. I'm just going to ask Lorraine if she wants to me to add anything else there. Anything else you want me to add, Lorraine?
No, just thank you very much for another excellent session, Philippa, and we'll send around the link so you can view this video afterwards, and also the information on the upcoming courses with Philippa on the 10th and 13th. No, thank you very much.
No problem at all. And as I said, please do get in touch if there's any further questions that occur to you later on down the line. My contact details will be on the recording. And you know, take care. And I hope everything goes well for the return of pupils on the 8th of March. Stay well, and I hope to see you on another course in the future. Thank you.